How do you get to fourth place in a three-way race? Ohio Governor John Kasich has found out the hard way as he continues his pursuit of the Republican nomination for president.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining guest host Ann Fisher this week, Jackie Borchard, State House reporter for Cleveland.com. Jim Siegel, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Dale Butlin, Democratic strategist, and Bob Clegg, Republican strategist.
After another round of primaries, including a contest in his native Pennsylvania, John Kasich still finds himself fourth in a three-man race for the GOP nomination for president. Donald Trump won all 5 primaries this week, including Pennsylvania, where Kasich finished a distant third. Kasich stands fourth, however, in the delegate count, behind Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, who dropped out a month ago. To staunch the flow of primary votes to Trump, Kasich has cut a deal with Cruz in upcoming primaries. Kasich cedes Indiana, and Cruz leaves him New Mexico and Oregon.
I don't have, like Daddy Warbucks behind me giving me all this money. I have to be careful about my resources. But furthermore, the reason why I'm in this race is I'm the only one that beats Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we don't lose the United States Senate, the Supreme Court, the state, and the local courthouse. I don't see this as any big deal, other than the fact that I'm not going to spend resources in Indiana. He's not going to spend them in other places. So what? What's the big deal?
Okay, Bob Clegg.
What?
What's the big deal? The deal with Cruz is all but bombed. In fact, they're denying they even had a deal now. What's the cost-benefit analysis at this point for Kasich staying in the race?
Well, I think he feels that as long as there's still a possibility that it could be a open convention with no one candidate walking in with a majority, that gives him that avenue to be a consensus candidate, since he's the only one that is polling ahead of Hillary Clinton at this point. So whatever you do to stay in the game and be in the game and try to stop Trump from getting to 1237 is the game plan.
But it just strains credulity to believe that even if there were a brokered convention, which I think is increasingly unlikely, but even if there were, that they would turn to the guy who has won one primary, his home state. And as you point out, is even behind Marco Rubio in delegates. But this alliance thing, desperation moves typically don't work. And this one didn't work for 2 reasons. Number one, it was a classic insider move in a year when the Republican base is going for outsiders and has shown nothing but contempt and disdain for establishment candidates and tactics. But secondly, the alliance wrongly assumed that Cruz voters would go to Kasich and Kasich voters would go to Cruz if the other weren't in the race. But the reality is that Trump is the second pick for many of these voters. So, in other words, a lot of Kasich voters prefer Trump to Cruz, and a lot of Cruz voters prefer Trump to Kasich.
Right. Jackie Borchard, Governor Kasich continues to tout polling that shows he's the only Republican who can best Hillary Clinton in November. Why don't those numbers move voters or even the party establishment?
I think at this point in the primary, they're not looking ahead to that. So even though polling consistently has shown him above Hillary Clinton, there are people who stood very passionately behind their candidates for several reasons, including what Dale mentioned about being against the establishment. And Kasich is, at this point, the most establishment candidate in the race. And it's not, he's banking on that helping him when he gets to the convention. But what we've seen in this election year is that is a detriment to the candidate.
And it's, there was a point where, frankly, up until probably 2 weeks ago, where I think I and a lot of people at least understood the path that Governor Kasich was trying to take. The polls show I'm the only one that can beat Hillary Clinton. We'll get to a brokered convention, and eventually the delegates will want somebody who can win, and they'll come to me. But the last 2 weeks, now we're in a situation where he hasn't even come close to winning a single state in the Midwest outside of Ohio. The polling shows he's going to get killed in Indiana next week. It's just, at what point do you have to look and say, yes, I understand the polling shows you're beating Hillary Clinton, but all the voting has showed that the Republicans are not favoring you, and I'm just increasingly having a hard time grasping where his path is now, considering that he just can't win outside Ohio or get close.
And then there were theories that, well, he's staying in because this is for the next time around. This is for 4 years from now. And that's where I get to the, you've heard that, that's where I get to the cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
Is he doing harm?
I don't think he is thinking 4 years down the road. I really don't. I think his biggest problem is the mere fact, and we've all talked about it, Republicans are different. If you went and looked at the exit polls for all these primaries we've already had, and you look at the top issues for Republican voters, being able to beat Hillary Clinton in November is probably 5th, 6th, 7th. It's around 9-10%. Democrats are different because Democrats have to win the presidency or they're locked out of everything. Republicans have always been more, it's about the principle. It's about, what we believe in and trying to implement that. And it's not, their sole focus isn't on winning. And sometimes with elections, that's a problem.
I think we've seen sort of a similar split, though, in the Democratic Party this time around, with Bernie Sanders doing so much better than a lot of people expected him to do.
Well, but even Bernie Sanders is not a classic outsider.
Right.
He's been in the Senate now, or in the
He's
House.
a communist. How can he not be an outsider?
I think it's a socialist for
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My point is he has been an office holder for the last 25 years or longer. One of the things that's so fascinating to me, and Bob's right, there are people, and I've even worked with people even on my side of the aisle who would rather be right than be president. My experience is they usually get their wish. But in the case of the Republicans this year, it's fascinating. When you look at New York, that's the one that really caught me up short. New York was, in the time of some of our memories, a place that was chock full of what used to be called Rockefeller Republicans. They were moderate to liberal Republicans. In the New York primary this year, between them, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz got 75% of the vote. Kasich got 19%. So I think I've said it before and I'll say it again. I sound like a broken record. John Kasich's biggest problem is that he's running in the wrong year with the wrong message. He's trying to run as a moderate in a year when the Republican base has no interest in moderation.
And a bigger problem for Ted Cruz going forward is in just this past Tuesday with the 5 primaries that Donald Trump won handily, Donald Trump also carried the most conservative Republican voters in all those states. And that's probably the first time that he's been able to do that. And that is the base that Ted Cruz has been counting on, is to be his vehicle to move forward. But if we're at a point now where Trump himself is starting to carry the most conservative Republican voters, Ted Cruz has got a problem.
And that's the thing, is that Trump's numbers, his margin of victory keeps going up. This past week, we had the 5 primaries. He was at 60% in some of them, but in none was he lower than the mid-50s.
Dale, you're right. I think in fact Republicans may be coalescing quicker than the Democrats are, because the Trump margins on Tuesday were much higher than the Clinton margins were on Tuesday, which tells you there's still a lot of Democrats hanging in there for Bernie.
Well, we got margins, and then we've got actual turnout. And is the Republican turnout been what it needs to be come November?
We don't know. I mean, we know with the primaries it's been humongous. I mean, and if you look at Hillary vote totals in some states versus Trump vote totals, he's even getting higher vote totals than she is in some states. But the question is, what about November? That's a different animal.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, and speaking of the Clinton campaign, after a near shutout of rival Bernie Sanders in this week's East Coast Democratic primaries, Hillary Clinton ended the week well-stocked with delegates. Clinton won primaries in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. On Tuesday night, she also leads Bernie Sanders by about 800 delegates. And analysts say that she would only have to take 20% of the remaining delegates for an all-out win of the nomination. Now, she turns her full attention to the November election.
Thank you, Pennsylvania. I applaud Senator Sanders and his millions of supporters for challenging us to get unaccountable money out of our politics and giving greater emphasis to closing the gap of inequality. And I know together we will get that done.
Dale Butlin, the path appears clear for Clinton. Sanders, on the other hand, has said he won't stop until the nomination process is completely finished, until the convention. Meanwhile, he's laid off a couple hundred campaign workers to focus on California, supposedly. Do you see an end game here for Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, so let's be clear. The Democratic race is over. Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee. Bernie Sanders has no plausible path at this point to victory. In fact, because all of the Democratic primaries and caucuses award delegates on a proportional basis rather than winner take all, Hillary could lose every single remaining primary and caucus and still have enough delegates to win the nomination. So Bernie at this point is, in my judgment, playing for two things. One is an influence over the party platform, and the other is a prime speaking role at the convention. I think he's almost certainly going to get the latter. I don't think he's going to get the former. I don't think he's going to have much influence over the platform.
How do they get along in the meantime, though? Bob Clegg, as a political consultant, what do you say about that?
Well, that's going to be the interesting dynamic here. I think Bernie's hanging in there because, like a majority of Americans, he doesn't trust her, and he doesn't trust that she really is a Democrat like he wants. He sees the money, the stench of corruption that hangs over her, and he doesn't trust her. So he's going to keep her feet to the fire to the convention, and I think he is going to try hard to try to get some pieces in the platform, and I think he'll be more successful because the longer this has gone on, the sharper the lines have become, and she needs all those people in the fall to get this done, and she can't do anything at the convention that looks like she's slighting Bernie Sanders, because his people aren't going to put up with it. I mean, they don't like her to begin with, and if she just goes out of her way to try to screw him over, they're not going to be happy.
Yeah, Sanders has a huge bargaining chip in his supporters, many of whom have said, I'm never going to vote for Hillary if she's a nominee, and that's kind of the challenge now, as they're going to be negotiating things behind closed doors, of course, is, what might Hillary accept into her plans going forward and her message that's going to appease to the Sanders supporters. And you've already seen her move a little bit more to the left on some issues because Sanders has pushed her that way.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's been good for the race.
Well, I think it has, in terms, I don't know, good for the race, but I agree with Jack. I think it has pushed Hillary a little bit to the left. I think she's going to have to be a lot more careful now in the way she talks about things like the money that's coming into her campaign and into the super PACs that are backing her, and the favoritism she may or may not want to show to Wall Street. I mean, she's going to have to be much more cognizant of these kind of issues because, I mean, Bernie Sanders, Dale's right, he has no shot to get this nomination anymore, but I mean, he's had millions of people vote for him. He's raised money that's in an unprecedented fashion.
Yeah.
And hasn't gone out, actively seeking it nearly to the extent that politicians traditionally do. They just kind of been organically rolling in. So, I mean, you can't ignore that. But I am kind of surprised, though, that Sanders does continue to play a little more of an attack dog role rather than just push a message, which I don't understand what he thinks that's getting him.
Well, I mean, give Bernie credit. I've never seen a campaign where you are no longer you don't have a chance of becoming the nominee, but you're still outraising the presumptive nominee, and you're still drawing bigger crowds and more enthusiastic crowds. That's why he's staying in, because he can. I mean, he has a much more active and a much more aggressive campaign than she does, and he's going to take advantage of that and all the media that he gets out of it as long as he can.
In the end, in my opinion, it's not going to be very difficult to unify the Democratic Party because the distance between Hillary and Bernie on the issues is not that great. If you look at college, for example, Bernie says free college, she says debt-free college. It's not that great. The problem, I think, is on the Republican side because Donald Trump, who will almost certainly be the nominee, is going to redefine what it means to be a Republican. On issue after issue, whether it's immigration, trade, taxes, foreign policy, you name it, Donald Trump is not the traditional Republican.
That's the problem we Republicans have, because Donald Trump is going to hit Hillary Clinton for voting for the Iraq War. Whoever would have heard that. He's going to call George W. Bush a liar. He likes Planned Parenthood. He wants to raise taxes on rich people. I mean, he could almost be the Democrat nominee. That's going to be the Democrat problems. So many of his positions are so close to Hillary Clinton's, or what they used to be until she started changing them like she always does. But that's going to be the big problem, is that we're going to have the most liberal Republican candidate probably in my lifetime running as a Republican nominee.
But the Democrats, I'm certain, are counting on the fact that his, the tsunami of opposition he's going to face from women and minorities is going to galvanize the Democrats in a way that even if their positions aren't that far apart. I'm sure that's what the Democrats are hoping for, that the opposition to Donald Trump from groups, particularly white women who normally vote Republican in presidential races, that's going to sink him no matter what the feeling is towards Hillary Clinton.
They're going to have to rely on that, because Hillary herself cannot motivate the Democrats to come out and vote. So they got to have something, and Trump would be the vehicle they can only use. There's nothing else they can.
I could beat presidential politics to death all day long, but there's another issue. Cincinnati area state lawmaker John Becker is floating a proposal that he says would protect Ohioans from sexual predators who may pose as transgender people. That follows a similar law enacted in North Carolina last month, where ever since a heated discussion has followed between sides both for and against the idea. The economic fallout of the North Carolina law has been well documented in the media. PayPal announced that it would withdraw plans to build a new operations center in Charlotte, costing the region more than 400 jobs alone. Concerts have been canceled. Bruce Springsteen fans have been crushed. Jim Siegel, what is Representative John Becker, a Republican, thinking in terms of Ohio?
Well, he thinks this issue is something that needs to be addressed. He's a very conservative Republican on social issues, and he sees this as a problem, that he doesn't want a sexual predator who dress up like a woman and go into a girl's bathroom. Now, I talked this week with both the House Speaker and the Senate President, both Republicans, of course. I didn't get the sense either one of them wanted to touch this or come anywhere near it. President Faber essentially said, let's not go out and try to solve problems that we don't really know exist yet. And I just got to believe that they're politically savvy enough to know that, what are you really to what end are you doing this for, and what kind of backlash will you face? I mean, I believe it's already illegal to dress as a woman, go into a bathroom, and do something unseemly involving the people in there. So I just
or
don't.
Vice versa.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to imagine exactly what problem they would be addressing here that would justify the backlash they'd be getting for it.
The problem that Representative Becker says he's trying to address is that when cities like Charlotte or companies like Target create a policy that says anyone is welcome to use the restrooms that correspond with the gender they identify with, he says that creates a loophole where someone could one day identify as a woman even though the previous day they identified as a man, and enter that space. And the problem there's several problems with that logic, thinking that is a problem. But Target took a lot of heat this week by re-announcing that that's their policy. It's been their policy for a long time, and that's kind of the core of this non-problem, is that things have been working well, just fine, before any policies were created for one way or another.
And that's the thing. Think about how ridiculous all these bathroom proposals really are. Short of requiring people to carry their birth certificates around with them and then posting people at restroom entrances to check those birth certificates, how exactly would you enforce a law requiring transgender people to either go into the bathroom of the gender to which they were born, or in the case of the Becker proposal, into a unisex bathroom? How would you enforce that? Secondly, for someone like Becker, who's always complaining about government and putting burdensome regulations on business, most businesses, certainly restaurants, other businesses, don't have unisex bathrooms. How expensive would it be for them to have to build all these unisex bathrooms to accommodate transgender people? Let's be clear what this is really about. Becker says he wants to stop predators from dressing up as women to molest girls in ladies' rooms, but he can't cite a single example of that ever happening in the state. And it's already a crime in our state to assault anyone anywhere. So what this is really about is Representative Becker's desire to continue to assault the LGBT community.
And the question is, to what end?
I don't know. I think the Senate President and Speaker Rosenberger are smart to basically wait and see if a problem ever develops. And then if a problem ever develops, they will then address that issue. But until that happens, I don't think they're going to address that issue.
We are comforted. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on Wednesday ruled that Ohio regulators overstepped their authority by approving a plan to protect profits for American Electric Power and Akron-based First Energy at the expense of customers who would have paid more for their electricity. Jackie Borchardt, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio wrestled with this issue for a year and a half before unanimously approving this plan. What did they miss?
Well, apparently it stems from the fact that these companies in their proposal cited a waiver from the feds back in 2008. And the feds, this commission, in reviewing the case said, well, wait a minute, this waiver did not grant you permission to go ahead and do what you're doing, and we are the only ones that have the authority to do that. And so they unanimously struck the agreement down. And this very interesting, this all comes up, a month after it passed the PUCO, and only I think a day, within 24 hours of First Energy having a phone call with its quarterly holdings call, and telling everybody that, hey, actually these power plants that we applied to protect with this PPA actually made money, and they're going to continue making money. And the whole premise of this agreement was that these power plants don't make money, and we need help from the ratepayers to ensure that we can continue providing electricity to them from these plants.
Their shares went down about 10%. AEP was in better positioned. They went down about a percentage point. Not too bad, but American Electric Power has asked Ohio lawmakers to take quick action to re-regulate power plants. And I'm wondering about what the appetite might be among lawmakers to undo the electricity deregulation that was passed in 1999. Any takers on that?
Well, if anyone who was here in 1999, I was around then and watched I wasn't heavily involved, but boy, what a mess that was in trying to get that deregulated the first time. I know that I guarantee you there's no great interest in diving back into it to reverse it all now. It doesn't mean it won't happen, but it is a complex, it's a complex issue, a complex structure that has to be put together. And I'm sure that no one is sitting back going, boy, I can't wait to get back into this again.
And if they did decide to pick it up, it's something that they would want to examine over a decent period of time. It's not something they would, I think, decide very quickly. And I mean, I'm talking study committee of a study committee of a study committee, kind of look at it.
Yeah, and I think the real difficulty in all this is trying to determine how successful this has all been in the last 15, 16 years. And I don't know if that can be even done. I mean, figuring out, what worked, what didn't work. Do we know yet? I mean, do we have any clue yet? I don't know.
One thing I think that the FERC ruling this week underscored was what a lapdog for the utility companies the PUCO has become. And so I think for viewers here, the kind of takeaway from this segment of the show is that the action this week by FERC was bad news for Ohio utilities, but very good news for Ohio consumers.
Right. The ratepayers will not get the hikes that would have occurred with it, and I'm wondering what effect that might have on the Ohio General Assembly's willingness to go back and redo this. It's going to look like they're going back to raise the rates on everyday people.
And in addition to everyday people, there were, the Ohio Manufacturers Association was strongly against this. People who consume a lot of energy strongly against this. So it wasn't necessarily a popular decision that they made.
All right. Okay, time for our final off-the-record parting shots. Bob Clegg, you're first.
And the people of Ohio do not have to wait very long to see their very first general election commercial for president, because that moneyed candidate, Hillary Clinton, her super PAC, Priorities USA, has come in and laid down a TV buy in Ohio that starts on June 8th and runs all the way through November 8th. Lots of commercials with lots of money.
I am jumping for joy. Dale Butlin.
I fearlessly predict that Donald Trump will win the Republican nomination on the first ballot, and there will be no brokered convention in Cleveland. I also predict he will then go on to lose the general to Hillary. And the only question now is how badly he will lose. Will it be bad enough to take the Republican majority in the Senate and maybe even the House down with him?
Jim Siegel.
I'm going to go a little less than that. I'm going to just predict that Donald Trump will get within 50 delegates. one way or another of the 1237 that he needs. Either way, I think it'll be tough to not nominate him, even if he's short. But I think that if he is short, I'm sure there's going to be folks like Kasich trying to find a way to keep him out.
Jackie Borchardt?
Well, I think one silver lining of this kind of crazy election cycle is you have primaries like Indiana that actually matter. And I think that's something that, we can applaud, that people in states toward the tail end of the primary season, actually, their votes matter. They feel important.
Last time we saw a GOP poll out of Oregon.
Exactly. I think that is a kind of a fun part of it all. Here's a prediction, and I admit I'm not as much of a gambler as all these folks. All Sides with Ann Fisher on 89.7 NPR News will broadcast live May 6th at the Chadwick Arboretum Spring Plant Sale on the OSU campus. For more information, go to the WSU.org, and I hope to see you there. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Please check us out online. We're on Facebook and Twitter and our WOSU mobile media app. You can connect to all of that on our website at WOSU.org. I'm Ann Fisher. Have a good week.